We're here today to celebrate what will be a transformative grant from the United States Department of Transportation, led by our dear friend, Secretary Pete Buttigieg. I think the Secretary has become an expert on this port and certainly on global supply chain and been a leading voice in this nation to make sure that infrastructure, jobs, and a comeback from our pandemic are front and center in the Biden-Harris administration. And I know that you have a very discerning eye, our friend, when it comes to picking projects, but we know that we made this one an easy choice for you, for our Department of Transportation, and for our nation. And with our great representation that we have here today from Congresswoman Nanette Barragan in Congress, the allocation of funds to finally invest in this country aren't just something that we fund and see years later. We are seeing promises made and money delivered within months. This grant will mean less traffic and less pollution. It will mean more jobs. It will mean quicker throughput and fewer accidents. Who could be against that? And here, where 1 out of every 16 containers come over what we are going to fix with this federal and local money, because we are matching this, it's a third local, 2/3 federal, we'll be able to see both trains and trucks move more swiftly and more safely through this area. Councilmember Buscaino, I want to thank you, too, for the work that you have led in this port and the career that you have given your hometown here in San Pedro. And thank you so much for joining with us today. We are very lucky to have had your representation, and I've been blessed to have your friendship. We also have labor with us, represented by Sal Di Costanza of ILW Local 13, the largest local and one of the most powerful unions in our region. Labor is making possible everything what we do, and the building trades, too, who are going to go out there and build this and make sure that we have infrastructure that works not just here in the port, but for our metro system, our airport, and throughout. We have the Commerce Secretary arriving. We have 2 secretaries here in Los Angeles in the next 24 hours. And I know that we had a discussion with our Undersecretary just a couple minutes ago on the way here about what we are doing in this infrastructure construction capital of America. And we're so blessed, too, to have LA's best friend and my predecessor, a great mayor, and now our state's infrastructure czar, Antonio Villaraigosa, here as well. And we are so pleased. Stand up so people can see you. That's what it looks like when you no longer have to wear a suit as mayor. But speaking of well-dressed men, Mike Gibson, our amazing assembly member, is here, always looking well-matched, from his bow tie to his pocket square to his bracelet. Check out the whole ensemble. But he is more than just a good-looking representative. He produces as well. And thank you for the state, which is stepping up, for instance, our job training center with $110 million to help us train for the jobs of the future. This is the most productive port in the United States of America. It's the biggest container port, not just in the United States of America, but the Western Hemisphere. And we also want to thank Senator Gonzalez. Is she still here? There, she's right there. Senator Gonzalez, for your incredible work as well on all things transportation and how articulate you are in creating the jobs of the future right here in our backyard. This partnership is unmatched. And Mr. Secretary, it's so great to see you back here. You've been on the boat rides to see both Long Beach and the Port of Los Angeles. We've had Secretary Walsh here to look at what we hope will land soon as a great contract for our working men and women of ILWU, as well as for our companies that are here. And of course, we were so honored to have the President of the United States on this deck, one of a tradition, Republican or Democrat, of candidates and presidents who come to this hallowed ground where President Roosevelt took a trip to begin his negotiations in Tehran with both Stalin and Churchill. But this history that we write today is a harbinger of a brand new era for transportation and for goods movement, led by our City of Angels and this region. Just like the goods, people, and the vessels that you see coming and going around us, the pace of progress in the City of Angels is unmatched. Hardly a week goes by that we're not breaking new ground or celebrating the completion, pouring new cement, cutting a ribbon, and the pace from here is only picking up speed. Not only has the port come roaring back from the pandemic slump, posting a record volume of throughput in 2021, our July, and I think we're still awaiting, though Gene may share the August numbers, were a record for July ever, the highest throughput we've ever experienced. And we're making strides not just to move what is here, but to reimagine what's coming. We know the number of jobs, 1 out of 9 in this region, that depend on this port. But in America, 1 out of 50 jobs depends on this port. So you can go to the farthest stretches of Maine or Florida, in Texas and Montana, and this port moves jobs in America. But for too long, we've been the forgotten stepchildren in Long Beach and LA of Washington, D.C. We're 3,000 miles away. But that's changed with this secretary and with this president and vice president. And it's changed with the leadership that we've seen in these ports, with increasing speed and efficiency. We're investing more innovative, sustainable, and equitable infrastructure. That's right. We can actually clean up the air. Under Mayor Villaraigosa, under my administration, we've seen the pollutants in the air fall by as much as 90%, while we've seen the throughput go up to record numbers. That pace and that ambition runs into an aging infrastructure, where trucks hit train tracks and trains cause us to pause those truck trips. The investments that we will unlock here today are part of a reimagining of how we train a workforce for the future and how we build out a more sustainable and faster acting port. Today's announcement of the RAISE grant is no exception to this vision. This critical new funding will unleash the potential of our port, removing a choke point of trucks and unlocking the full potential of an 80-acre support facility that serves all the terminals, gets us our chassis, makes sure that we can continue to move freight through this port. But it is more than an investment in infrastructure. I want to be clear, what Secretary Buttigieg is delivering is an investment in our people, in our jobs, and in our future. It's faster growth for American manufacturers who can get the goods that they need more quickly to put them into factories here and to create finished goods. It means higher security and better safety, investing in a thriving local economy, and one that promises a prosperous future for workers, unionized workers, for generations to come. And as I said, lastly, it means greater sustainability. We will see 3,016 metric tons of emissions taken out of the air, which means cleaner air for our residents, and it means better hope for our world as we confront climate change. We are going to make this port the most sustainable in America. It's why we recently launched, Mr. Secretary, our Clean Truck Fund program at the ports of LA and Long Beach, which is collecting a fee on polluting trucks and incentivizes transitions to zero emissions drayage trucks. Both Gene and I just returned from Asia, where we saw some of the cutting-edge technology that we are testing right now at the port with companies in Japan, companies here in Los Angeles and elsewhere in Europe, to make sure that we can show every port in the world that this is not only possible, but it's right around the corner. We've been collecting almost $1 million every week, on track to collect nearly $50 million in our first year. And we're working with Botany in Sydney, Australia, in Mumbai Port Trust, with Shanghai at a time that America and China aren't cooperating with much, to show that some things trump politics, pun intended. And we need to make sure that we decarbonize our maritime shipping under the Quad's Green Shipping Network announced by the Biden-Harris administration less than a year ago with India, Australia, Japan, and the U.S. We're also joining Tokyo in taking part of the Shore-to-Shore initiative that helps us to pilot and deploy zero-emission hydrogen fuel cell drayage trucks on our streets. And this is what we were just working on when we were in Japan. But this investment bolsters all of this, Mr. Secretary. It sets some fundamental truths that we can go big and bold on our economy and our jobs, and big and bold on our environment and our safety. We can strive for greater efficiency and still create good-paying jobs right here. So we are so excited to be here today with you, to accept this money, to see that you are a man who has delivered on his word. And this coalition, this historic coalition, that is making sure that when the President said this will be the infrastructure administration, we stand ready to make that a reality for Los Angeles, for our state, and beyond. So with that, let me turn it over next to the man who is the executive director of this port, an unmatched enthusiasm he has brought to the Port of Los Angeles, and the national and international leadership he has brought to make sure that we're having this conversation not in a vacuum, but with our neighbors, with our fellow partners in other nations, and up and down the West Coast. Please welcome Gene Soroka.
Thank you, Mayor Garcetti, and good morning, everyone. It is a privilege to be joined here today by Secretary Buttigieg, Congresswoman Barragan, Assemblyman Gibson, and Senator Gonzalez, along with all of our distinguished officials and guests. So I'm pleased here to be celebrating this $20 million raise grant awarded to the Port of Los Angeles. With last year's passage of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, we are now at a milestone moment with respect to investment in our nation's ports. And it's critical that the funding goes where it's needed most. Cargo coming through the Port of Los Angeles reaches each and every one of our nation's 435 congressional districts. As the Western Hemisphere's busiest trade gateway, we're pursuing every grant dollar available to accelerate our plans to build resiliency, increase efficiencies, and reduce our overall environmental footprint while creating more jobs here at America's port. That's why I'm thrilled to accept this grant today, which will be used to construct a 4-lane grade separation and an important marine support facility on Terminal Island. This project will improve truck access, speed up the movement of goods, reduce emissions, and increase safety for all motorists. I want to express my sincere appreciation to the Biden-Harris administration, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, Senators Dianne Feinstein and Alex Padilla, our congressional delegation here today, and so many other agencies and officials that have started this process. For nearly 2 years, the administration, together with California Governor Gavin Newsom and his administration, have focused the spotlight on our nation's supply chains and especially its ports. Their vision, tenacity, and support to rebuild America's infrastructure and further strengthen our supply chain is exactly what this industry needs. Thank you.
They say short speeches win elections, so I'm voting for that guy, not the one from before. Thank you, Gene. Next, let me invite our champion, Representative Nanette Barragan, to come forward. She has picked up the baton that others, like Janice Hahn and others, for a long time said Alan Lowenthal was so important, but has really been the woman who has delivered now, not only this grant, but being able to deliver for this ship, deliver for our vision, and been an extraordinary representative not just of the port, but of the people around the port. So thank you so much, Representative Barragan, for being with us today, and the microphone's yours.
Well, it's a beautiful day to be at the port, and it's great to have Secretary Buttigieg back here to celebrate the delivery of these funds, the funds that we have needed and that we continue to need. Now, when we take a look at what's happening here today, this is just the beginning of dollars that are being delivered as part of the Infrastructure and Jobs Act. And we're going to continue to be that squeaky wheel. We know that when Secretary Buttigieg came, it was about highlighting how important the port has been, the volume that comes to this port, and the importance it is to the American economy. I can tell you that when I'm in a room, I'm always talking about the ports. And Democrats and Republicans alike will come up to me and say, how are we doing on supply chain issues? And that has been an opportunity to talk to them about what the administration has done and our secretary have done. Immediately getting on the ball, making this a priority, saying we're going to do what we can, whether it was at the beginning, going to 24-hour operations, to rolling out new programs to get monies here. But now it's following through on this job and infrastructure bill and saying, how do we get money to places that need it, and making sure that the supply chains are at top of that agenda. And I can tell you, when I met with the president in the White House a couple of months ago, this was a topic he brought up himself. The ports and the supply chain issues and what are being done, and making sure that people like our Secretary Buttigieg is not only on top of it, but is coming here to demonstrate that commitment. Now, this grant, as was mentioned, is going to have a lot of benefits. I want to just highlight a couple of the environmental justice benefits, because I think there's often a misnomer that we can't have investment in in environmental justice in our communities and that it impacts jobs, but we're creating jobs and we're doing it in a green way. And so making sure that we are reducing the pollution that's coming off our ports and our truck traffic. And as we know, part of this grant is going to be to help with that congestion and the truck traffic there. But that's just the first piece. The second piece of this is also going to be more money for the ports in the new bill that just passed, the Inflation Reduction Act, where we are seeing investments there. $3 billion alone is being allocated for ports across the country to go zero emissions. And so, Mr. Secretary, we want you to remember the Port of Los Angeles, because this is ground zero for making sure that the volume is moving and that it's coming and it's impacting every congressional district. And so we've got to make sure that our surrounding communities are benefiting as well, as long with the ports. So we are going to continue to be that squeaky wheel, and we're going to continue to fight to get every single dollar here from the Jobs and Infrastructure Bill. And we're going to continue to fight, Mr. Viragosa, to be in your ear as well, to make sure that the dollars are coming here to the port. Because as has been said, for far too long in Congress, the Port of Los Angeles has been the biggest producer and has not gotten its fair share. And this administration has heard that. They know that. It's time for us to deliver, bring the goods home. Today is just the first start of that. So I'm looking forward to more of these. And Mr. Secretary, having you come back every single time we get more money.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Good stuff. Thank you so much, Representative. Amen, amen, and amen. Next, I'd like to invite Labor to the podium. And Sal DiCostanza of ILWU Local 13 is here with us today. And Sal, I'd like for you to share what this means for your members today, to have an administration that's delivered, and what it means for the future of the port and of those jobs. Sal?
Good morning, Mr. Secretary, elected officials, distinguished guests, and members of the media. Welcome back to the Port of Los Angeles and San Pedro Bay. My name is Sal DiCostanzo, and I am honored to say a few words today as a member of the International Longshore and Warehouse Union, ILWU. Over the past 2 years, the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach have consistently shattered national cargo volume records. These amazing results have occurred in spite of the unprecedented obstacles of COVID-19 and are a shining example of how the American work ethic and spirit of ingenuity are alive and well. The men and women of the ILWU have successfully collaborated with federal, state, county, and city officials, as well as our fellow goods movement partners, to provide innovative supply chain congestion solutions for the benefit of all Americans. Since your last visit here, Mr. Secretary, you will note that together we have cleared the tremendous backlog of ships off of our shores and have significantly reduced container dwell times. In short, the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach are on the right track, pun intended, and improving our throughput efficiencies every day. We would especially like to thank the Biden administration for its leadership role in addressing recent supply chain congestion issues, as well as its long-term commitment to the transportation sector by ensuring the passage of both the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, as well as the Inflation Reduction Act. These once-in-a-generation investments will improve the vitality of our gateway within the national supply chain, while supporting middle-class union jobs and contributing to a better environment. Retired General Stephen Lyons, our esteemed port envoy, recently said, "Cargo in motion must stay in motion." Well, we couldn't agree more. Investments in critical rail projects within the port complex and across the state of California will facilitate the efficient flow of cargo for decades to come. Mr. Secretary, on behalf of the ILWU, I would like to thank you for your sustained commitment to this gateway, as evidenced through your numerous personal visits, consistent engagement strategies, and vocal support of labor. We look forward to our ongoing collaboration and pray for your continued success. Thank you.
Thank you, Sal, and I hope that you're probably in negotiations, but I hope you got a chance to go to Italian American night at Dodger Stadium and watch Joe Buscaino not bounce a pitch and get it right over this plate. Well done, Joe. But the Di Costanzos and Buscainos should need to be hanging out there. I also want to thank Mario Cordero for being here, who directs our Port of Long Beach. Let's give him a round of applause and thank him. Mike Lowenthal, all the commissioners, well, that are here. Thank you for that as well. And finally, last and certainly not least, but last and the most, we are so excited to welcome back to the port somebody who, he was delivering money just a month ago to the airport, I said is not just one of my favorite public servants, but favorite people in the world. He is a committed human being to making this world a better place. He has a record of doing that in local communities, now at the national level as well. And he's somebody who brings such intelligence and such integrity to the work, which I think for a long time people thought infrastructure, transportation are dry and esoteric. He has made them living, breathing, human issues for all of us. And he has certainly been a dear, dear friend to this city of Angels, to this state, and to our nation. Please welcome, with LA enthusiasm, our Secretary of Transportation, the one and only Pete Buttigieg.
Good morning.
Morning.
You keep making me feel this welcome. I'm going to keep coming back. It is so good to be here. So good to be back in California, back in Los Angeles, back aboard the deck of the Iowa, which is a national treasure, and so pleased to be among friends and among people who are at the forefront of America's transportation systems and supply chains, creating jobs and benefiting people in literally every part of this country and with impact around the world. Great to be with Gene Soroka. I was just thinking about when you and Mario and President Adams from the ILWU and I were sitting with the president in the Roosevelt Room just a little under a year ago with about 100 ships bearing down on these ports. And to think that now that backlog is cleared, no one thinks we're out of the woods. But remembering when they said that the holidays were more or less canceled, seeing the teamwork and the collaboration and the effort of the workers that got us to an all-time record high in retail sales that season, and seeing the work that's going on now, knowing that results will only continue to come if we continue to invest, is what we're all about. I want to thank Representative Barragan for your support. She never hesitates to advocate for her district. I can tell you that because every time we speak, she's urging me to come here and or make sure resources come here. And I'll have a little more to say in a moment about how fortunate we are to have this, not just her support for this district, but her and her colleagues' support for the infrastructure investments and the broader investments that we're making. I want to thank Sal for speaking for the ILWU, all of the members of labor union leadership who are here and who have played such an extraordinary role, you and your members, who were not able to Zoom to work through these last years and who we count on so much. And of course, my great friend, Mayor Garcetti, someone who I looked to when I was a mayor, who made me a better mayor, who continues to be a great friend, who is a partner in problem solving for the Biden-Harris administration, and who continues to demonstrate how a great leader can deliver results not only for the community he is entrusted with leading, but on a national and global basis. And I can't help but notice, Eric, every time I see you, it seems to be good news that we're celebrating.
Yes,
So,
it is. It's good. We're going to get together more.
We're going to continue that great streak. We're proud to be here marking such important progress being made on our supply chains, but also recognizing again that there is so much more to do, and that the project here that we're celebrating is a great example of exactly what the Biden-Harris administration's vision for building a better America looks like in practice. And this is a particular moment where we're celebrating not just what's happening at the port, but people being able to breathe a little bit easier at kitchen tables across the country because of the Inflation Reduction Act that was signed just a few weeks ago with the Congresswoman's support, your senator's support, and the enthusiastic support of this administration. We're talking about prescription drugs being more affordable for seniors, health insurance less expensive for millions of Americans, families saving money on their utility bills. And I would note that even though this regrettably did not get the support of any Republicans in Congress, it does have wide bipartisan support from Republicans, Democrats, and independents across this country. Also represents the most significant climate legislation passed by this or any other country ever. And that happens alongside the bipartisan infrastructure law that the Congresswoman and your senator supported, allowing us to say yes to more good projects like this. But I want you to understand that even with this added funding, this was an extremely competitive round. We got $13 billion of applications for $2 billion of funding. And so the projects that rose to the top are ones that demonstrated clear and compelling value to the American people. And everyone who worked on that here has a lot to be proud of. I've been fortunate to spend a lot of time talking with Gene and his team and the workers represented here, especially over the course of this last year. Virtual meetings, in-person meetings here in LA, in Washington, and at so many moments between those early conversations. And this is where we see that actions speak louder than words. The actions we've taken together, improving data sharing, fees helping to motivate shippers to move their products more quickly, and so many other steps. We've seen that extraordinary progress, the counts of those ships bearing down on these ports from the hundreds to numbers that you can count on one or two hands. Fewer delays, even as the workers here are moving record amounts of cargo in a port complex responsible for more than a third of all the containers coming into or leaving the entire country by sea. Well, so to speak, we're not out of the water entirely. We are seeing longer wait times on the East Coast ports right now, and while we've seen shipping costs come down, they've got further to go as part of our fight against inflation. There's more to do to fix the supply chains that were torn up by the pandemic and to make them more resilient for the American economy for years to come. And right here we have a great example of that. The 80-acre maritime support facility was repurposed last year to store chassis and empty containers for every terminal at the ports of LA and Long Beach, which was an innovative step to help address the bottlenecks here. The problem is the lack of a bridge for the trucks to get over the rail line that loops that facility, so that the trucks spend a long time waiting. My word of the day is centroid. That's what they call this this peculiar shape you see on that board. Effectively, a railroad loop surrounding as many containers as you can imagine. And the problem is there's only one way in and there's only one way out, and it's not efficient. That's impeding the movement of hundreds of thousands of cargo containers, creating delays that ripple as far as the American Midwest, the East Coast, and everywhere in between. And that's going to change. I am delighted to be here to formally celebrate the award of $20 million to the Port of Los Angeles to build a new 4-lane roadway and bridge over that railway.
Yeah.
This is what good infrastructure investments look like. As the state leaders who are here who have fought for infrastructure investments at the state level know, as Mayor Villaraigosa, who knows so well from his leadership of the city and his current role, it's always a good idea to put a mayor in charge of something important. So we regard it as an inspired choice. It's not about the numbers on the page and the dollars in the spreadsheets. It's about putting them to work to solve problems, and that's what's going on right here. These improvements are expected to reduce trucking delays by almost 2,500 truck hours every single day. It's going to allow freight trains to move goods more rapidly. And yes, that's part of the fight against inflation because it can help reduce shipping costs and the cost of goods. It's going to make the trips safer for truck drivers. It's hard to believe how low and how small the current one-way tunnel is. Trucks have to drive at about 5 miles an hour because there's no margin for error, just a couple of inches between the top of the truck and the roof of the tunnel. And very importantly, the fact that the trucks will not be waiting and idling will reduce thousands of tons of emissions per year so that the families who live in or near these ports can breathe cleaner air, which is a matter of environmental justice and public health. And it's going to be built under a project labor agreement with union workers from the local area. And apprenticeship opportunities to bring new people into these good-paying and great careers. Creating this site last year was an innovative, fast solution to COVID supply chain challenges. Now we're helping to make it more permanent and more effective. And with grants like this, we're making investments in communities across the country. Just from this one program alone, 166 grants across the United States. And I'm tempted to tell you about all of them, but I'm going to behave. But I want to give you just a flavor. We were in Fernley, couldn't be more different from here, not a drop of water for a very long way around Fernley in northern Nevada, in the desert where we're helping build an inland port near a major manufacturing and logistics hub to help move goods more affordably and efficiently. And here, a little closer to here, tomorrow I'm going to get to see the road upgrades we're building in Fontana, reducing traffic and giving kids safer trips to school. There's an obsolete transit facility in Yuba and Sutter counties. We're going to replace it with a new one supporting a zero-emission bus fleet. We're helping the Toloa Dini Nation create walking and biking paths along Highway 101. All told, California alone will see nearly $120 million just from this round of raise grants. And we are delighted to see the results those are going to bring. So look, this is happening in the context of a lot of good news for our country. New laws that are saving families money on their health care, prescription drugs, and energy costs, and that large investment in climate change. Strengthening care and benefits for America's veterans, something that has been a long time coming. Bringing high-tech manufacturing jobs back to America. So we're seeing more and more of the goods made in America exported through these ports and not just on the inbound side. Making life every day better in ways seen and unseen for everyone. So we couldn't be prouder to be with local, with state, and with federal leaders here, with workers, and with everybody who is, whether people realize it or not, responsible for that watch you're wearing, that shirt you're wearing, whatever you had for breakfast, whatever device you're using to watch this interaction. You have the people of this facility to thank for it, and we are here to help. Thanks so much for the chance to join you.